Will Butler-Adams can still remember the days when he noticed that something fundamental was changing. After the British Prime Minister Boris Johnson imposed the first lockdown a year ago, more and more employees suddenly came to him and asked if they could borrow a bike. Butler-Adams couldn't believe it. He's been preaching the benefits of cycling for years, but apparently a pandemic had to break out before his own people would finally change. And that is what they make themselves: bicycles. The fear of contracting the virus in the crowded London underground was just too great for many, and it still is. Most of Butler-Adams employees don't take the tube to Greenford even a year after the corona crisis broke out. There in West London is the Brompton Bicycle Factory. This is where the bicycles are produced. However, not ordinary ones, but ones that can be folded up in a few simple steps. Just one comment on that. First of all, when I was living in London, before my bike was stolen, I was riding my bike to work. That was quite of a test of bravery, because the drivers in London are not used to people, or at that time were not used to people riding a bike. And my boss and me, we were the only ones doing that anyway. But I'm coming from what was a long time called the bicycle capital of Germany. And so, of course, I did, until my bike was stolen, even from the second floor. That's London. But it was dangerous. I hope it's better today, and the drivers of cars are now a little bit more concerned with it. And another small thing, our public transport company here in my city, there you can lease these foldable bikes, not from necessarily from Butler-Adams, but in general, to take them on the bus and then drive on. But they even lease them to you, or rent them to you. So it is nothing uncommon to me, I want to explain with that. But Butler-Adams, 46-year-old, jeans and a loose shirt, has been running the business of the folding bike manufacturer Brompton since 2002. When he was interviewed, he was sitting relaxed on a grey armchair in the factory and is in a good mood. On the one hand, this may be due to his nature, because he is someone who sees the glass more half full than half empty. On the other hand, he can look back on a year that marked a paradigm shift in the company's history. After all, Butler-Adams not only managed to get his employees excited about cycling, he has also succeeded in significantly increasing their numbers. He says, before the pandemic, we had 450 employees. Now there are 600. So it looks like not just Brompton employees who are getting more bicycles. The pandemic has triggered a real bike boom around the world, says Butler-Adams. Even if the first months of the corona crisis were full of uncertainty, he did not close the factory for a single day. When the pandemic hit London, he sent home all those employees who had health problems. He told everyone else that in addition to the risk of contracting the virus, there was another risk, namely losing their job. At that time, however, he didn't know that he would do one thing above all: create new jobs. That this was happen was really not to be expected, because in addition to the corona crisis, Butler-Adams had to cope with another crisis: Brexit. We prepared for the very worst, he says. Nobody could have known whether the British government would be able to conclude a free trade agreement with the EU. Premier Johnson was only able to announce a deal on Christmas Eve. By then, Butler-Adams had long since acted. He had rented warehouses around the factory to stock up on parts such as sprockets, tires or wheel hubs. It cost Butler-Adams tens of thousands of pounds. Now, 3 months after the end of the Brexit transition phase, he is happy that the warehouses are well stocked. However, this has less to do with leaving the EU than with COVID. Because people buy bicycles like crazy, the world market for parts is pretty drained, says Butler-Adams. So how good that he can fall back on his stocks, which he had built up for the fear of a no-deal Brexit. The exit from the EU has not affected Brompton's business nearly as much as Butler-Adams feared. What annoys him the most is the bureaucracy that has been going on since the beginning of the year. All kinds of paperwork must now be completed, customs declarations, transport certificates. The bottom line is that shipping the bikes to the EU is now more expensive. But Butler-Adams had to raise the prices for the bicycles by 3 to 5% because of the Brexit costs. He says, "I was never a Brexit fan myself, but I accept the decision. As a businessman, I have to deal with it." So far, this has worked relatively well. This may also be due to the fact that Brompton bikes are products that you have to be able to afford. A folding bike costs a good 1,800 euros, with electric drive even more. In Germany, for example, the retailer Manufaktum, they have an advertising slogan, "the department store of good things," raves about the unsurpassed concept of the Brompton company. The history of the London company began in 1975 when the inventor Andrew Ritchie began to develop a folding bike because the folding bikes of the time were simply too bulky for him. From his apartment he could see Brompton Oratory, a Catholic church in London. Hence the name for the bicycles. But for a long time he couldn't find any investors. Ritchie could not begin series production until 1988. Back then it was more of a small manufacturer than a modern factory. Butler-Adams joined Brompton in 2002 as a manager, and what he saw there he liked only to a limited extent. "It blew me away at first," he says today. "The production technology was at the level of the post-war period. There was no such thing as a strategy. With 24 employees, the company only produced 6,000 bicycles a year. Now, almost 20 years later, there are 75,000. What has not changed in this time is the basic idea of Brompton. The folding bikes from London should be a useful companion in everyday life. When folded, they are small enough to be transported with one hand in the subway or on the bus. They can also be quickly unfolded again, and even the 1.90 m tall Brompton boss can drive on them quite comfortably. So it would work for me too. Brompton is particularly popular with commuters. They can cycle from home to the train station, take the bike folded up on the train, and then pedal from the next train station to the office. If you are afraid that thieves might steal your expensive bike, it is best to fold it up under your desk, provided you come back to the office at same point because of the pandemic. Some commuters do a simple math when they buy a Brompton. Depending on the city, you have to buy a ticket if you take a bike with you on the subway. This is not necessary with a folding bike. After all, it hardly takes up any space. Will Butler-Adams identified 3 other reasons for Brompton's success. First, there's the fact that more and more people are moving to cities. The managing director believes that this development will continue despite Corona. Second, people would pay more and more attention to their health. Thirdly, there's also the desire to really only buy things that are useful, says Butler-Adams. He says, "Be honest, we all have too much stuff that takes up too much space." And just one thing, I named Brompton a lot because I picked that, what I found for this topic to show, once again, Brexit had an influence on them too, and on the prices of their bikes, but also on a development. Everybody's always talking about sustainability, green deals, whatever, and coming from really a bike capital. It is what you really have to think about. Is it necessary to go every way with a car, or can you take a bike? We even made bike driving licenses in grammar school, in primary school here when I was a kid. That's how my city ticks. And these folding bikes are there from many other companies, much cheaper as well. And as I said, even my public transport company here, which belongs to the city, is leasing them out or renting them out for you to use them. You can buy them in a lot of shops here. There's even a bike dealer here from my little place where I'm living in Münster, just in my close area. You can get them everywhere nowadays, from a number of companies. So it was not advertising, was just using them as an example, but there are a lot more. And you can, if you start thinking about using one now, have a look around, browse the internet, have a look where you can get one, especially if you're on the continent, if you have to get one from the UK, with all the kerfuffle we have at the moment, as I like to say. And if you're in the UK, look for UK produced ones until everything has been sorted, is running smoothly. That is not too a bad idea at the moment, especially with all the tension going on. And I don't look the way at the moment because I really got fat during the pandemic, but that is because all my appointments were gone and I was not using my bike. That's one of the problems. And when you are working a hell of a lot, you don't just go out just to ride a bike for fun. You're glad when you're finished with working and can sit down. But when I have tons of appointments in normal times, not just via video conference, I'm walking a lot. And I'm using the bike. Not all distances have to be done by bus, by train, by car. Use your bike. And I will do that again. So when the pandemic is over and my normal appointments are back, and the meetings, then I will work that thing out as well. At the moment, is it just funny? Because I gained quite some weight during the lockdown, I climbed up the ladder for the vaccination. I'm in the next group after the one that has been called now, unfortunately because of the weight. But in every disadvantage, there is an advantage. I know. You are grinning at the moment like hell, most probably. But if you also want to stay informed, please subscribe to my channel. Auf Wiedersehen.